Thank you, Hari. Are you going to upload the presentation? I thought I'll prepare a small deck for all of you so that uh, my thoughts are more structured.
Right.
While the deck is being uploaded, Pawan, fascinating thoughts. Really appreciate your glimpses on where the device head, and you're so right that it's a symbiotic relationship. Thank you, Hari. Let's move on.
Thank you, Harish.
Next slide, Hari.
Yeah.
So this is an important slide, especially in the context of the date today. If you look at the morning papers, there's this big debate between IMD, the meteorology department, as well as SkyMet, the private weather forecaster, that when exactly is the monsoon going to hit India. We know that if you just call up friends in Andaman Islands at Port Blair, monsoon is already
Harish, your voice is not so clear. Can you just come closer to the laptop?
Am I audible now? Is it better?
Yeah, better.
Yeah, so this slide is all about weather forecasting, and there is this debate going on between the private weather forecasters, SkyMet, as well as IMD, where what is the exact date? So there is SkyMet says that this year the monsoon is going to hit Kerala on 28th of May this month, whereas IMD says that there will be a delay of 5 days. But the point of view is that there are two powerful supercomputers located at the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in Pune. One is called Pratyush and one is Meher. These are exceptional computers in terms of their quantum ability. This is the first six petaflop computing ability supercomputers available for weather forecasting, and we are getting better and better than the best systems in the world. Next slide, please. So if you look at why I'm bringing the weather forecasting abilities, that there has been a complete change of behavior between the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea, where some of us are located, right from Kerala to Maharashtra, was much calmer of the two cousins, whereas the Bay of Bengal was a bit more naughtier, if I may use the term. But if you look at this specific slide, you can see that all these tropical cyclones are in 1 year. And this is entirely happening because of the impact of global warming. And my friends from Kerala, who are also co-hosts of this event, IMA Kerala, they are witness to the massive catastrophe which hit Kerala in 2018, starting off from August 16, 2018, because of exceptional monsoon. And there is a prediction that in 2020, we will have a hat trick of extremely violent monsoon for the state of Kerala. So this change of behavior is also coming as a result of supercomputing ability and our ability of cognitive predictions. Move on. Hari, next slide. This also is something which has happened in 2004. Many of us remember on a beautiful day in December 2004 when the Indian Ocean tsunami struck and more than 250,000 people lost their lives. In the Indian subcontinent, specifically in our country, more than 10,000 citizens lost their life. And there has been an effort pioneered by the United Nations to bring an early warning system similar to the Pacific early warning tsunami system, which is based out of Hawaii. Now we have an advanced system which is coordinated by both India as well as Australia to give an early warning system for earthquakes and the tsunami strikes. Let's move on. So in the context of, Hari, next slide please. So in the context of what Pawan had mentioned before and also other speakers, we have that ability, and this pandemic in our lifetime is something which is so fascinating because we are seeing cutting edge technology which are used to predict pandemics. So there's a big debate out there about black swan events. As you know, the technical definition of a black swan event is something which is totally out of the blue and you can't predict, especially its devastating health and economic impacts. One is tempted to call COVID-19 a black swan event, but actually it is not so. Because literature has always been talking about it. You have the famous TED talk by Bill Gates, where he had predicted the coronavirus type pandemic a couple of years back. Now, when you look at these two companies, AI-based companies, one is Blue Dot, which is based on Toronto. Very interesting. Blue Dot predicted this, actually announced this pandemic on 30th of December. Why this date is very important, that after the Wuhan outbreak took place, this is 9 days before the public health authorities in China declared it, and also the WHO declared it. Blue Dot is an AI firm which is based in Toronto. They looked at, it's an AI program which keeps on reading and digesting data. So they looked at epidemiological data around the world. They looked at microclimatic models. They looked at demographic changes, and they looked at all these things and said that yes, this is something the world needs to be alerted to. On the other side of the spectrum, another artificial intelligence company called MetaBiota. This is a San Francisco-based company. What it did was it looked at natural language algorithms, and it started data mining social media accounts and also the portals used by travel agencies. And it could predict the spread of the virus to neighboring countries such as Taiwan, Malaysia. It talked about South Korea much before the first viruses even appeared in those countries. So these are very interesting examples of the power of AI to kind of prognosticate and also do a crystal ball gazing of what tomorrow will be today. Next slide. Moving on to the speed in which the solutions, when we talked about solutions, you wouldn't believe it that after the pandemic was announced by the WHO, it was declared as a pandemic. Within 4 days, a company called Insilico Medicine, it is part of a Johns Hopkins incubator ecosystem, which is based in Maryland, United States. It started looking at the biological architecture of COVID-19 and looked at existing database of drugs which is available, and looked at which is the next possible drug in terms of possible efficacy in terms of COVID-19 management. And all this was done in a record speed of exactly 4 days time. So that's the speed of computing in terms of cloud computing, quantum computing ability, which Insilico Medicine brought forward for healthcare workers in the front line. On the right side, you find the example of Flinders University. Flinders University also looked at the biological architecture of COVID-19 and started looking their advanced cloud computing and manufacturing ability to bring forward the first candidate vaccine. And very interestingly, that they collaborated with researchers in the United States and already moved on to animal models. Currently, there are more than 100 candidate vaccines around the world, but the speed in which we can cut down in terms of typically a vaccine development takes years together, but thankfully due to the ability of technology in our hand and manufacturing inputs, we can crash those timelines in a very remarkable manner. Next one. We can't escape the power of Google or Apple. Most of us this is part of our own life. You can't go out of the house without either your friendly neighbor Google or even Apple. But imagine Google and Apple forgetting their competition and sitting on the same table and talking with the WHO in terms of developing a similar type of API and an interoperable kind of a tool which can communicate with the public health app, which is actually propounded by the WHO. And this is something which is basically used for contact tracing and giving legible and authentic information from public health sources. And this is already out there. You can download it from both Google stores as well as iOS. And it's a very interesting example of how big tech companies are coming together. And like my colleagues mentioned, like Pawan had mentioned before, the example what he gave about Volvo was fantastic. It's a similar example when the tech giants are getting together and giving something for the benefit of humanity. Move on. Next slide. Again, another example starting off from China itself, because it was in the eye of the storm literally in Wuhan. They looked at technologies, and in this specific example, the technology company was Alibaba, the largest tech firm in China, which brought about AI algorithms in terms of making quick COVID diagnosis using CT scans. So typically for an expert, it takes roughly about 6 minutes. but the time was crunched from 6 minutes all the way to 20 seconds in terms of CT-based diagnosis of COVID. Next one. Uh, there are also other examples from the world that some public health authorities are talking about early prediction, that not just in the case of COVID, that are we able to prepare our public health systems if we can get the signals much ahead, like I gave you the example of weather forecasting. So in this specific example, they are using real-time devices like Fitbits, for example, to look at your basal heart rhythms, you look at your sleep rhythms, to look at whether a candidate population in a specific geography is having pyrexia. Because typically when you have high grade fever, you have sleep disturbance and your basal heart rhythms can also get impacted. On the right side, the example of using smart thermometers. There's a specific manufacturer in the United States where the smart thermometers linked up to your smartphone, and data of temperature readings are accumulated in a central server. And imagine, based on the number of smart thermometers per capita available across the population area, you can actually develop spatial diagrams and real-time look at fever patterns evolving over a large geographical area, and consequently focus in very targeted manner the public health responses. So this is something which is very interesting. Let's move on. In our own example, and I'm really happy about my friend and colleague Dr. Hari Prasad, what he talked about before, and all of us in India, we face this big challenge of 24/7 television channels. Like, you know, as it is, you're in a lockdown. After Prime Minister Modi talked about the Janata curfew, most of us and across the country, citizens were either stuck in front of the ED box, which is your television sets, or you are getting information feeds from your smartphones. And there is a lot of panic in the common citizen, that how do you differentiate between COVID-19 and a simple flu? And many of us got completely overwhelmed by telephones. You know, the telephone exchanges got completely crowded because of panic-stricken citizens rightfully asking questions. The doctors, some of them who had given their numbers to their friends and relatives, they got bombarded. And that's when organizations such as Apollo had brought out their famous AI-based chatbot, which was extremely useful. Many organizations have brought chatbots which reduce the pressure on healthcare providers, and it's an AI-based algorithm which looks at your frequently asked questions, or even a symptom tracker to tell you that you don't have to worry. This is nothing to do with COVID. It could be just a basic flu, and so you can manage it symptomatically, for example. Let's move on. If like I'm right now based in Bangalore, and most of the newspapers couple of weeks back, the headline news was of Fortis Group of Hospital introducing their robot, which is there on the left side, and the robot nicely communicated public health information to anyone coming to the Fortis Hospital at Banargata Road. And it's a very good example of how providers can use robotics to either give relevant information in the public forum, or some of those pictures talk about use of robots in inpatient setups. Whether you want to go into your most critical zone, your isolation zone, or you have this restrictions of friends and relatives of patients cannot come as before into a hospital setup. So how do you enable the two-way communication? Because in a hospital intensive care unit, it is not just your physical status, but your mental health status is also of great importance. And that's where robotics can come and bridge the gap and connect the patients with their loved ones. Next one. So there was this interesting YouTube video about the Kerala police. I think that video was specifically for the city of Kozhikode, where in spite of the lockdown being announced, there were some youngsters trying to enjoy the free time in the Kozhikode beach. You know, there's a lovely beach in Kozhikode, and boom, you have the drone in the air, the Kerala police flying over, these bunch of youngsters. And it's an interesting YouTube video that as soon as they saw the drone in the sky, they all went helter-skelter. This is a similar thing which is used now by police forces across India. You have a picture of the Karnataka police launching their own drone in the sky. The first example of using the drones was definitely in Wuhan, where they used initially for the draconian measures for strict law enforcement and ensuring that quarantine protocols are not violated by any of the citizens. They also looked at areas where public health workers could not go to sanitize areas, and the drones were used to spray disinfectants over a large area. In some of the examples, drones with specialized infrared sensors were measuring the surface temperature of people down to pick up are there any fever pockets available in the population. That's another example of using drones. We all know that China has got one of the world's largest cluster of CCTV cameras. The interesting thing about the CCTV cameras in China is that they are not dumb terminals. They are embedded with AI algorithms, which is called facial recognition technology. Yes, there's a debate in liberal democracies where the privacy of citizens are being compromised, but then China has used it effectively, and now the same technology is being used by countries such as Russia. You have examples from Turkey, and also in our neighborhood in Southeast Asia, Singapore. So that's something which is very fascinating about how we can use drones and CCTV cameras in the management of a pandemic. Next one. So, Pawan, your entire emphasis and the question asked to you about Make in India, I think that this has been a shake-up, literally a shake-up for all of us in the ecosystem that many of us as hospitals, we use the lockdown period to ramp up inventories. But the question was, we don't have domestic air, we don't have transportation systems, no trains, no trucks, nothing. So we were forced to look at our own neighborhood areas in terms of sourcing PPEs and other devices from domestic manufacturers. In many examples, there are some good examples where private providers have handheld domestic manufacturers across the value system and also given the quality inputs in terms of forming the required kind of produce. My prediction is that the big lesson for India, and also like you rightly said, Pawan, the big push for the government of India is that India is going to become a superpower in terms of domestic manufacturing ability in the entire healthcare spectrum, whether it's to do with low-tech PPEs to high-tech imaging devices to, of course, vaccines. We know that the Serum Institute, for example, in Pune, is in the vanguard along with Oxford University to bring out their first candidate vaccine. You have institutions like CMC Vellore, which is also in the forefront of bringing out a candidate vaccines. We all read about the amazing efforts by not just startups, but by an industrialist like Anand Mahindra, when he said that the entire manufacturing ability of the Mahindra group can be put for manufacturing ventilators. So it's a pretty interesting ecosystem what I see in India. The end result, when the dust settles, is that I think we will be able to supply it to the rest of the world. India is rightfully known as pharmacy of the world, but I'm quite sure and confident that the spectrum of devices and the range of devices which India can produce will definitely be godsend for many countries, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia. Move on. In terms of roll of dice, after the last live telecast by Prime Minister Modi, I've been fascinated by the series of press conferences of Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister. Yesterday's press conference was quite pertinent because many people do not realize that some of these, the challenges which India faces to do with red tape and bureaucracy. One example I would like to quote is our former president and space scientist, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who incidentally was my childhood hero. So it is said of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam that he was not a great scientist, but he was a fantastic people manager. And I remember the early days when Dr. Kalam was a member of the Defense Research Development Organization, and there was a missile project called the Devil, and that time the Prime Minister was Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi had the wisdom to shift APJ Abdul Kalam from the Devil project. This was in the precursor of the DRDO to ISRO, and he was based out of Trivandrum at the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center as the director of India's first satellite launch project called SLV-3. Now, the genius of Dr. Kalam was to bring various groups of engineers, especially space engineers and aeronautical engineers together and create cross-functional teams on a mission mode. And that's how we were able to launch Rohini into space using SLV-3 project. After the success of this, the initial satellite launch vehicle, the government of India transferred Dr. Kalam back to DRDO into the famous integrated guided missile development program. So we have the various missiles, as you know, Akash, Prithvi, whether we talk about the Agni series, Nag series, everything is a result of Dr. Kalam's vision of bringing in cross-functional teams. So what I'm trying to explain is that if we cut through bureaucracy, especially the scientific bureaucracy in our country, we have the infrastructure, we definitely have the brain power and the ability in our country to create world-class systems at 1/10 of the cost. Yesterday's press conference, I would like to draw your attention, friends, is primarily because of the opening of doors of private players to participate along with ISRO, for example, in space projects with the with the Defense Atomic Energy, and of course, in collaborating with the Ministry of Defense. The lessons which India has to learn is from the United States. So there is an example on the top picture of the Pentagon, and then you have DARPA. So DARPA is an acronym for the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. For your information, Internet, which we take for granted today, the father of Internet was called ARPA, and ARPA was actually created by this agency called DARPA. They were the pioneers in using machine technology for basic computing, and that's how Internet was born. The picture of the skunk next is also an interesting example of, this is from Lockheed Martin. It's called Skunk Works, where you have an innovative group of engineers who are put together. There is no budgets. Budgets are not even discussed. Their main job is to bring in technology which is at the cutting edge. Can you imagine if we can unlock our abilities together? And thankfully, because of our economic situation, we are now talking about Make in India for all, especially for large multi-billion-dollar defense products. So what I feel is that in healthcare, especially in the field of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, this single policy decision is going to change India's ecosystem and our future for the coming few years. Next. So in conclusion, because I guess the slide is not there, I feel that compared to 1918 and the 2020 pandemic, there are so much of similarities, because brass tacks, whether we talk about social distancing, whether we're talking about the wait, the endless wait for a vaccine, many of those principles are very low tech. But on a bigger picture, I think mankind is much better prepared because of the kind of tools what we have to face crisis of this. And pandemics will definitely happen. We have not yet understood the total number of zoonotic viruses out there. This is just one of the exotic viruses which made the transition supposedly from animal to man. But there's also an enigmatic and interesting theory that this could be a bioengineered virus. We do not know really what is responsible for this behavior. But we are much better prepared, and hence the kind of morbidity and mortality what we see today is not so bad as what happened in 1918. Thank you so much.